Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was going to start by saying that best has been saved to last, but Bruce has done a fantastic job of doing that as well. I'm going to talk to you about the forgotten P of marketing, pricing. And I'm going to talk to you about pricing superheroes and leadership. And then I'm going to wrap up with 10 ways that you can start your pricing leadership journey. If anyone is interested in the slide pack, I've already put it on my SlideShare account. So I will give you the address at the end of the day if you're interested in getting the slides. In 2009, I'd just done 3 years of commuting to Lancaster University Management School in the UK to co-present a pricing executive education workshop. And I was in the BA lounge at Heathrow waiting for my flight back, and I picked up a copy of Fortune magazine. 2009, the cover story was the world's most admired companies. Who do you think would be on the list of the world's most admired companies of Fortune magazine in 2009? Google? Apple? GE? Amazon? Let's have a look. Apple. Berkshire Hathaway. Bruce has already told us all about them, and we're going to come back to them in a minute. Google are there, yes. Johnson & Johnson. No one thought of them? Procter & Gamble, FedEx, Southwest. We've heard about Southwest this morning. GE and Microsoft. One non-American company, Toyota. 2 years later, do you think the list has changed? Yep. Who's on the list 2 years later? Or who's off the list? Samsung, you think? Toyota off? Microsoft off? Let's have a look. Google's climbed up a few places, knocked Berkshire Hathaway down. Southwest is still there. Procter & Gamble is still there. What about most recently, 2014? Google on top? Apple are on top. Amazon. Amazon featured heavily in The Economist 2 weeks ago. Just turned 20 years old. Google, Berkshire Hathaway, Starbucks. All very interesting, I thought. That's right, this is American, that's exactly right. So that actually got me thinking. By the time I've got to the other side of the world, back home, I was starting to think to myself, who are the big brands in Asia? Who do you think, for the same years, who do you think is on the list in Asia? Asia Pacific. Sony, Samsung. McDonald's.
Is this companies you're after?
Yes.
So not some Gucci quality would be.
Yes. Just thinking of companies that are headquartered in the Asia Pacific region.
Hyundai will be on
Hyundai. Kia. So this is the list in 2009. Now, this is not Fortune magazine. This is taken from a survey called Brands, which is produced by Millward Brown. And it actually takes into account a forecast of future earnings. So you can imagine that fortune of future earnings in a country that has got 1.3 billion population is going to be a nice, healthy number. So you see a lot of Chinese companies up there. 2011, any changes? More Chinese companies. Yes, you're right. You actually start to get a few of the dot-coms coming in. Baidu and Tencent, QQ. And 2014? Alibaba. Any other thoughts? Tencent jumped to number 1. China Mobile, Baidu, Toyota, Samsung. Yes, and we see the emergence of 2 Australian companies getting onto this list. Now, you're probably... What was that? Especially their wealth management business. Now, you're probably wondering where I'm going with this, but I'm fascinated as to why is there never a list of the world's best pricing companies? If we had a list of the world's best pricing companies, who would be on that list? Walmart? Aldi? Why Walmart and Aldi? Value for money? Okay. I leave that to you, because I can give you a list of companies that I think do a fantastic job in pricing, but no one does it for every single reason. There'll be a company that General Electric do it really well because of their organisational capabilities and creating pricing departments in all of their divisions. IKEA do it because pricing is upfront. Pricing is developed by their product designers. So it's not, oh, we're about to launch this product, what price do we charge? And that does happen. So it could be a whole range of reasons. Who else do you think would be? Alibaba? Why?
Their business model is far better than Amazon.com.
Okay.
I was going to go Amazon because they're actually constantly surveying other prices to make sure they're competitive.
Okay. Google? What do you like about Google?
They closely match the demand, and price is a function of demand and supply.
Okay. Low-cost airlines? Why do you like low-cost airlines?
Well, it's enabled a lot of people to travel in a basic manner.
Expanded the market? Yeah. Have you ever flown on Ryanair? Did you enjoy the experience?
You get from A to B. It depends what experience you're looking for.
Okay.
Let's go the other end of stuff. Harvard Business School.
Harvard Business School?
100 grand for a couple of weeks.
Fantastic money if you can get it, isn't it? Absolutely.
Well priced.
So GE, Rolls-Royce, Apple have changed the business model. Their pricing now is based around maintenance rather than price.
Absolutely. Who flew here? Okay. When you go home, grab a window seat, look out the wing, you will see an engine from GE or Rolls-Royce on the engine. Airlines used to buy those. Do you know how they sell them now? Power by the hour contracts. It's a rental model. It's beautiful. And the airlines only get charged when the aircraft is in the air. And when the aircraft is in the air, it is making money for the airline. When it's sitting on the ground, it's not making money for the airline, they're not getting charged for it. It's a beautiful model. So, there's one company no one's mentioned yet, I'm surprised. No? Sorry? Apple. Apple usually comes up every single time. What do people like about Apple? Who's an Apple fan? What do you like about Apple? Design?
Easy to use.
Bruce? Quality? Quality?
Functionality.
Functionality. I do a lot of speaking engagements and I always ask people about Apple. Not once has somebody said, I love the price.
Well, they're losing market share, aren't they? I was going to say that I don't think they do pricing. Well, they may have done pricing well in the past. I don't know whether they do pricing well now.
And I'll give it to you, there is big question marks over their how they filled Steve Jobs' shoes. Give you that, and Samsung are narrowing the gap and so forth. But the fact is that people who buy Apple products, 2% of their purchase decision is driven by price. 98% of it is driven by quality, features, all those other things that you have mentioned. They have totally desensitized customers to price and they have sensitized them to value.
Maybe you don't think they've cut themselves out of a certain portion of the market because of their pricing?
It's an interesting question, particularly with the 5S model, which is a lower spec, meant for the more affordable Chinese market and things like that. Whereas they've tended to grab a premium for their pricing in the past. I think it's a position that's in transition at the moment. So we don't have a list of the world's most admired companies for pricing. Why am I talking about pricing? Well, it's really important. If you can improve your fixed costs by 1%, on average you will see about 2.3% improvement in your operating profit. If you can sell more, 1% more of whatever it is you're selling, you'll typically see a 3.3% improvement in your operating profit. For a 1% improvement in variable cost, a reduction, it's around 7.8%, but you can expect upwards of 11% for 1% improvement in price. It's the most powerful profit improvement lever you have in your business. That 1% varies from industry to industry. In banking investment, you'll get your 1% back, but in some industries like automotive and transportation, the power of a 1% improvement in price is much more significant. Kroger, the US supermarket chain, if they could get people to spend $101 on a basket of goods instead of $100, do you know what would happen to their net profit? Triple. Their net profit would triple. It's a double-edged sword. If Coca-Cola reduced their prices by 1%, do you know what the loss would be? 20 million. And in 2001, Continental Airlines carried 44 million passengers around the world at an average fare of $193, and they made a loss. They would have broken even at $195 average fare. The difference is 1.04%.
Is that assuming the same volume of business?
Yes.
Price affects your volume.
Yes, but and we're talking about an average here. An average has got high fares and low fares in it and so forth, but on a constant volume basis, they would have made a profit, broken even at $195. So, if you were offering a service or a good with a 30% margin and you're planning on reducing prices by 5%, what sort of volume uplift do you think is required to maintain existing revenue, sorry? 5, 10 or 20? Hands up for 5. Anyone going 5? 10? 10%? Anyone for 20%? It is correct. 5% reduction in price, you need a 20% volume uplift to hold your revenue. What about the other way? If you've got a service with a 20% margin and you're planning on increasing prices by 8%, what sort of volume do you think you're putting at risk? Anyone going for 8.2? 28.6? 38.7? This is purely break-even analysis. The answer is 28.6%. So there's just a couple of reasons why pricing is important. And with that in mind, what I want to is sort of just explore a couple of pricing leaders. Bruce has a better photo of Warren Buffett than me.
Why does everybody cut the top of his head off?
Maybe it's him. Maybe he just, you know, he's worried about his hairline and so forth. Now, the reason I like Warren, and Bruce has mentioned many of the, you know, his strong points and so forth. For me, he is the Winston Churchill of pricing. You know, he's such a beautiful orator of pricing. You may be familiar with one of his terms: price is what you pay, value is what you get. But in 2011, he was also interviewed for an inquiry into the causes of the financial collapse. And he gave us two more absolute pearlers. If you have to have a prayer session before raising prices, you've got a terrible business. And the single most important decision in evaluating a business is pricing power. Bruce asked the same question. Would you like Warren Buffett to invest in your business? Imagine that was his investment criteria. Firstly, you had to provide value. Secondly, you had to be able to not have a prayer session before raising prices. And thirdly, you've got pricing power. How many of you work in a business that meet all three criteria? Okay. Before I talk about who my second nominated hero is, I want to take you back to 1953. Now, Bruce, I'll just get you to not say anything for a moment, but does anyone know what this is, this car? It's a Corvette, absolutely. Now, the Corvette was released in 1953, and it was released by General Motors, and you could have it any colour you liked, as long as it was white with a red interior. Here's how they did the pricing. Cost plus. They projected how many units they think they would sell. They worked out the cost to manufacture it. They added on a return on investment that they wanted, and they landed on a price point of $3,490. In 1953, they sold 315. In 1954, they sold 4,000. The project was almost cancelled after that, and in 1957, a gentleman by the name of Zora Arkos Duntov, that's a hyphenated name, came along and reignited the Corvette program. Does anybody know who this guy is? Bruce? Lee Iacocca. Yeah, Lee Iacocca. So I was just seeing if everyone was reading. So Lee Iacocca was, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was either heavily involved in Ford at the time or at the top of the Ford hierarchy at the time. He decided that they could make a better sports car. And he took a completely different approach to what General Motors did. He went out and talked to his customers and asked them what features they wanted in a sports car, as well as what price they would be willing to pay for it. He gave all this research to his engineers, and he said to them, I want a sports car that I can sell for $2,500. The engineers went away, and they came back. Lee, we've got your car. Now, it's not exactly what you wanted. It's 1.5 inches longer than you asked for. It's 108 pounds heavier than what you asked for. But we can price it at $2,368. And that was the price that it was launched at on the 14th of April 1964 at the World Fair in New York City. Roughly the same price as a Volkswagen Beetle at the time. So what do you think happened? Day one, 22,000 orders. Remember the Corvette, 315. 1.1 billion in net profits in its first 2 years in 1964 dollars. The average customer also spent $1,000 on optional extras, and Ford had forecast they would sell 75,000 units in the first 12 months. They moved 418,000 in the first 13 months. There's the, there it is. It's a Mustang, isn't it? Got the wrong photo. Hero number 3 is a guy by the name of Donald Woskowicz. Now, Russell's gone for the day, I think, or he's not here at the moment, but I'm an Essendon tragic, so I'm not going to worry about his surname. I'm just going to call him the Don, if that's all right. Now, Donald here is the CEO of a company called Parker Hannifin. Has anyone heard of Parker Hannifin? Parker Hannifin is a huge business-to-business organisation. They make hydraulic brakes for trucks. They make heat-resistant seals for jet engines. They make steel valves for cherry pickers. They make components for the space shuttle. And they also made the mechanism that helped tilt the fake steamship in the movie Titanic. Donald became CEO in 2001. At the time, he was 56 years old, and he's a native of Cleveland. He had also been at Parker Hannifin all his life. He joined when he was 22, and he just worked his way up through the ranks. The story I'm going to tell you about him and the transformation of pricing at Parker Hannifin doesn't really fit that mould of a lifer, as the Americans like to call them. So in 2001, Parker Hannifin had $9.4 billion in revenue, but it found itself in a profit rut. When he took over the helm, he took on a tour of the company's 225 facilities. And he saw people doing wonderful things. He saw them boosting productivity, landing new accounts, making shrewd acquisitions and the like. But he came to the conclusion pretty quickly that the company's pricing scheme was a disaster. He thought they had to stop thinking like a widget maker and start thinking like a retailer. And that meant determining prices by what the customer was willing to pay rather than what it cost them to manufacture. He knew the airlines did it, and he knew the sporting clubs and leagues in America also did it as well. Parker Hannifin had always used cost plus pricing, and they typically strived for a 35% markup on their products and services. What the cost plus approach also meant was that if they actually found a better way to manufacture something, the cost would be reduced. So despite the product potentially having more value, their thinking was to sell it cheaper. Now they've got over 800,000 products in their product ladder. They can't see what the competitors' prices are. It's pretty much a negotiation market. And major price changes can alienate customers. So once Donald realised this, he embarked on a bit of a transformation project within the business, which firstly involved adopting lean manufacturing, streamlining production and overhauling procurement, and then he tackled pricing. And he actually did his homework. He actually sat down in his office one day and he wrote a list of 50 objections that he expected to get from staff about his new approach to pricing. And he put it in his pocket and he carried it around with him everywhere he went. And every time he bumped into someone and someone said to him, "Have you thought about this?" he'd go, "Actually, I have, and this is my response to that." He'd prepared almost every objection that he could think of. But if he did get an objection from someone that he hadn't thought of, he actually took it away and worked out a solution to it. They were doing all their pricing in Excel, which is not uncommon for businesses. So they crunched all the numbers and so forth, and they divided their products into categories. Now, not a lot of companies do this. You hear a lot of companies doing customer segmentation. These guys did product segmentation. And they classified all their products into one of 5 categories. And then they adjusted prices to varying degrees within those categories. There were price increases, but there were also some price decreases as well. There's 115 divisions within Parker Hannifin. They appointed 115 pricing managers, one for each division. They appointed a chief pricing officer. The only other company I know of that had done that before was General Electric under Jack Welch. They rolled out their new pricing in about 2003, and customers complained. So you know what they did? They ran classes for them. They brought them in and said, let us tell you about your products. Let us tell you why we value them the way we do. They had one client who pushed back on price increases of the magnitude to 10 to 20%. They were buying 50 items. They said, we're not going to put up with this. We're launching a line review, which basically means their procurement people are going to get involved and see if they can find alternative suppliers. They found an alternative supplier for 3 of those 50 products. The other 47 price increases were accepted. You can see that their net income between 2002 and 2006, when this transformation took place, went from 130 million to 673 million. Return on invested capital up from 7% to 21%, and the share price versus the S&P 500 up 25% for the S&P and 88% for Parker Hannifin. More recently, like many companies, their share price took a bit of a battering during the GFC, but they are still in a very healthy position. Pricing leader number 4 is Reed Hastings. Has anyone heard of Netflix? Yep. Netflix. So Reed Hastings borrowed Apollo 13 from Blockbuster one day, and he forgot to take it back on time, and they charged him $40 for a late return fee. He could have bought 3 copies of Apollo 13 for $40. And it was doing his head in as to why you couldn't have a subscription model or a model like gyms and health clubs use, where you can have as many DVDs as you like for a monthly fee. And that's what he launched with Netflix. Sort of all-you-can-eat DVD rentals. At launch, I think it was about $17.99 a month. And you could have 3 out at the time. They would send you the return envelope, you'd put it back in the mail and send it back. And online you've got a watch list, and they'll send the next 2 or 3 out to you. In the late 1990s, they had 5 million subscribers. They had 1 billion ratings of movies online. They had 35 warehouses receiving 100,000 new Hollywood movies a day, 60,000 titles on file, 42 million discs, and they were mailing out 1 million DVDs a day. In 2005, Walmart said, we'll have a bit of this, thanks very much. But you know what? No one was interested in renting DVDs from Walmart. And they walked away from the business because Netflix had grabbed the position of leadership. Now, in 2011, some really interesting things were happening with video, DVDs and things like that. The market was moving to online streaming. Anyone got an Apple TV? You like it? Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So the market was moving to less and less people renting DVDs from your Blockbusters and places like that, and more people watching online streaming on internet-enabled TVs and so forth. Reed Hastings made a really bold decision. At the time, they were charging $9.99 for a subscription, and that included either DVDs or online streaming. The decision he made was he had to separate that, because DVDs were going to decline and streaming was going to grow. And he was going to be trapped in his business model if he didn't separate the two. So in the summer of 2011, the northern summer, they separated began separating the two businesses. If you wanted to continue getting the DVDs and the streaming, you had to pay $7.99 for each. Now, if you were previously paying $9.99, that's a 60% price increase. The other thing they were going to do was they were going to rebrand the DVD rental business as a business called Quickster. So, what happened? 60% price increase for a lot of customers. 16,000 complaints on the company's blog and 84,000 complaints on the company's Facebook page within 7 days. People don't write letters complaining about prices anymore. They send it out on social media. 84,000 hostile comments on their Facebook page. Initial estimates were they lost 800,000 subscribers. 800,000. Their share price fell from there, just under $300, to there. He wiped out a lot of value at his business. But, as you can see on that graph there, the long-term picture is very different. So those 800,000 subscribers that they thought they lost actually included free subscribers, and they actually lost 405,000 subscribers. They scrapped the idea of having the dual website, the Quickster website, and about 12 months later, their revenue per subscriber was up 11.9%, their quarterly revenue was up 10%, and their profit contribution was up 15.4%. They're about to launch in Australia. I see it was announced a week or so ago. They've been very successful with the series House of Cards, the Kevin Spacey series, which they've produced themselves. There's a second series of that now, and they are just about to launch a new series called Orange is the New Black, which has got as many raps on it as House of Cards have. But they have expanded internationally. This graph here actually shows you sort of why Reed Hastings was actually right. The dark bars are the DVD subscribers in the US. The blue at the top of the bars is the international expansion, and the orange there is the, have I got that right? Yeah, you've got the business model change here, September 2011, and you've got the declining DVD subscriber numbers, which is what Reed Hastings was catering for, the international growth and the growth in streaming. They've launched in Ireland since, and they've done something really interesting in Ireland. They launched an experiment where they've put the price up by €1 because they realised they got 84,000 hostile comments the last time they changed their price. But they've also allowed people to hang on to their existing price for 2 years as a means to assist in that transition to new pricing. None of you will have heard of this lady. This lady is a client of mine. Her name is Patty Wolf. She runs a little business up near Gosford that manufactures glass whiteboards. Now, glass whiteboards, nothing like this. They're more a bit like a splashback that you might find in a bathroom or so forth. She was working with a business coach. Her business strategy is to be number one in her market, to grow her business quite significantly over the next 5 years, and exit as a healthy premium and as number one in the market in a couple of years. With her coach, they identified that pricing was something that they could use to achieve those objectives. She has 3 different models of glass whiteboard. She has a plain one, which is just called toughened. That's the toughened on the screen there. It's manufactured in Australia, and it's basically the colour of a swimming pool when you look at the water in a swimming pool. She also has two other models. One's called Starfire. Starfire is coloured, so it doesn't look like a swimming pool. And there's a lot of demand for that. People don't necessarily want a swimming pool coloured whiteboard on their wall, they'd like another colour. And then there's a third model, a magnetic one. So the Starfire and the magnetic have got extra features in them. Those two models are made in China. Now because, and the toughened is made in Australia. Now, because Paddy priced on a cost plus basis, she could get those two models from China cheaper than she could manufacture in Australia. Therefore, she thought they should be cheaper to customers. That's how cost plus pricing works. What that meant was, there's a graph of her three models and the different sizes and so forth. The red is the toughened. You'll see the red bars in many cases are taller than the grey of the current, the Starfire, and the magnetic. She was selling Big Macs for the price of cheeseburgers. Now we repriced two of her products for her, and clearly the prices of the magnetic should have reflected the value in them, regardless of what the cost was. Customers don't buy things from you because of what they cost you to manufacture, you to develop them. They buy because of the value that they get out of them. So we repriced two of her products. That enabled us to restructure her product ladder, and on her current volumes at the time would have given her 11% revenue uplift. This is a work in progress. She's in the process of making these changes now, so can't tell you exactly what the results are just yet. So we've spoken about 5 pricing heroes. Just want to take a little bit of a diversion. This gentleman here is a guy by the name of Ron Johnson. Ron used to be quite high in Target in the US, and then he created the Apple stores. He was then approached to become CEO of JC Penney, a US mid to low market retailer. When he took over, they had over 1,000 stores in the US. They had wafer thin margins. They had 75% of their stock sold at 50% off recommended retail price. And they thought they could entice shoppers back into their stores and away from the internet. They had a lot of competition. They compete with Walmart, they compete with TJ Maxx, Coles, Macy's and Target. And they also have a very strong private label brand. Ron said, I'm going to give this business's pricing a bit of a shake-up. And in 2012, they launched what they called fair and square everyday pricing. So they put all their stock into one of 3 categories. Everyday prices, which were 40% off, monthly value, which were for things like Valentine's Day or back to school and so forth, and then clearance stuff. They stopped using coupons, still huge in the US. They were having 590 sales a year. That's almost 2 a day. They eliminated them. They changed all their prices to end in zeros. Prices ending in zeros are commonly associated with quality. What do you think happened? Yeah, absolutely. Totally underestimated the customers. The customers went there to shop for discounts. They weren't getting them anymore. They said that they now had to go and find a more affluent customer. They had to find them in a difficult economy, and that meant spending money. Sales fell by 25% by mid-2013 and they had a net loss of $985 million. Ron Johnson lasted 16 months as the CEO of JCPenney. So to sort of bring this into perspective with the theme of your conference, I think lessons for pricing leadership: you need to be a champion of the cause and understand the importance of pricing, just like Warren Buffett does. You need to be prepared, you need to be bold, and you need to back yourself. Donald at Parker Hannifin did that. He was prepared with his list of 50 objections. Reed Hastings was bold when he knew that the DVD rental business was going to decline and streaming was going to grow. And Paddy Wolf backed herself, put on a more commercial hat, and stopped selling Big Macs for the price of cheeseburgers. The customer is the single point of failure. You need to talk to them. Lee Iocca did that. Ron Johnson didn't. Look at other industries. Why reinvent the wheel? We saw Parker Hannifin looked at the airline industry and the retail industry. Adopt other industries' pricing models. Don't just resort to the latest benchmarking survey of prices in your industry. Pricing is holistic. We saw that Parker Hannifin tackled pricing at the same time they tackled lean manufacturing and innovation. There is no such thing as a pricing laboratory. There's only the real world. And we see Netflix doing a pricing experiment in Ireland at the moment. That is recognition of that. Likewise, the easiest way to get a price increase across with a customer is to add value. Add value, add to the price. And that's what we're seeing again with Netflix with House of Cards second series and Orange is the New Black. And then lastly, cost plus pricing is a flawed strategy. Customers don't care what your costs are. They care about the value you deliver to them. So I just thought I might wrap things up a bit with 10 ways, 10 practical tips that you can start your pricing leadership journey. The first thing is to develop a pricing strategy. It doesn't have to be big. This is the pricing strategy for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. 3 or 4 paragraphs. Tells you where they want to position it versus other super premium brands in the market and not to discount it. Most industries, there is an expectation of discounting out there. If you're going to discount, get something in return from the customer. If the customer wants half price, give them half the car. If they want half price for shoes, give them the left one or the right one. This is my friend Mr. Toscano, who's got a jewellery shop in Delhi. He's had an expensive divorce and now needs the money, so sale now on. When do you think Mr. Toscano will have his next sale? Next divorce?
It's up all the time.
It's up all the time? So the normal answers I get are next divorce or next when he remarries and so forth. The point is... Okay, let me ask you another question. When are Target going to be on sale next? They're on sale, absolutely. They have totally, Target, Big W, guys like that, they have totally conditioned the market that within 6 weeks you'll be able to get discounted Manchester or discounted that and so forth. There's an interesting article in The Age yesterday. Is there still such a thing as a sale? Everything is on sale. What Mr. Kasana is doing nicely here is he's not conditioning the market for sales. You don't really know when his next sale is going to be on. Form a pricing committee. It's the simplest thing you can do. You don't have to employ pricing consultants or pricing well, you can employ me, but you don't have to employ pricing analysts, pricing managers and so forth. Just form a pricing committee and have a dedicated pricing council meeting once a month, once a quarter and so forth. Don't talk about costs. Price is not based on costs. And the other thing to have a think about is removing invoice shock. How many people in the room here are on fixed capped mobile phone plans? Probably most of you are because your employers are probably paying for it. 60% of people on capped mobile phone plans are paying too much. If they paid according to call volumes and so forth, it would be cheaper. But those people are prepared to pay a premium for invoice certainty and removing that invoice shock month in, month out. It's not about you. There is one radio station that every single customer listens to, WIIFM. What's in it for me? Rule number 1 of pricing, which is related to what's in it for me, is that all value is subjective. You can provide features, you can provide benefits, but at the end of the day, value is in the eyes of the customer. Let me give you an example of that. A couple of years ago, I was doing some work with realestate.com, and on their mobile app, they launched click-to-call functionality. So if I was looking at this property that was being listed by Nelson Alexander, I could click that Call Now button on the app, and I could ring Fabian Rosen. They launched that, and I went out on a sales call with one of their sales reps. I went to see this real estate agent and said, we've got this fantastic new functionality for you. Click to call on the mobile site and so forth. It was positioned to help them defend a price increase that was accompanied with the new technology. The real estate agent took one look at it and said, I don't want that. And the sales rep, who had been trained to sell the value of the click-to-call functionality, said, what do you mean you don't want that now? You'll get phone calls. That is the most tangible return on investment we can give you for your advertising. He said, people could ring me any time of the day or night. I don't want that. I want emails. And the sales rep didn't have a fallback position because value is in the eyes of the customer. Rule number 1 of pricing. Rule number 2 is that value is contextual, and you can control the context in which prices are presented. Can I have a volunteer? Your name is? Jenny. Jenny, we're on a lovely beach on a nice hot day, and I say to you, Jenny, what's your favourite drink?
Champagne.
Champagne. Jenny, I'm going down to this beautiful bar at a 5-star hotel at the end of the beach, and I'll get you a bottle of champagne. How much are you prepared to pay for it?
It's a luxury hotel. Okay, it's probably a couple $100.
Couple of $100. So I go up, I start walking away. I've changed my mind. I'm going to go here. They've got exactly the same champagne at exactly the same temperature. How much are you prepared to pay for it?
Maximum $100.
$100. The context in which you present your pricing is controlled by you, and it will influence what customers will pay. Segment the market. Believe it or not, this is a website of an accounting firm. They have ditched charging by the hour, which I could go on for hours if you would like, but I won't. But they have developed all these different packages for their customers. A small, a medium and large, a special package for people who have rural properties, and a special package for people who have rental properties. Segmentation of the market, eliminating invoice shock, beautiful. Number 2, understand your buyer. In any business-to-business market, there are 4 types of buyers. There is a price buyer, the pit bull. They just want the cheapest price and that's it. Anyone been in to see Bunnings procurement people? Try and get your product in Bunnings? That's the sort of people you're dealing with in there. The dream customer is a relationship buyer. That's where the money is. You also have the value buyer, interested in price, but equally interested in quality. And lastly, you have the poker player. Anyone play poker? What's poker all about?
Bluff. risk
Bluff.
assessment.
The poker player has learnt to bluff better than you. The key to dealing with a poker player is to bluff back. But all 4 different types of buyers require different pricing strategies. There's no point selling the bells and whistles to the pit bull. They're not interested in them. The relationship buyer warrants special attention. You're going to work hard to keep them, but they're worth the investment. And lastly, remember Goldilocks. If you give your customers one choice, you've got a 50-50 chance of closing the deal. If you give your customers 2 choices, you're forcing them to make a price-based decision. If you give your customers 3 choices, 2 things happen. The customer thinks, which one do I buy? Not, do I buy from them? And secondly, you force them to make a value-based decision, not a price-based decision. So there are 10 tips that might help you start your pricing journey. I'm happy to take questions, but we've also got the panel discussion. So if anyone wants any of those slides, they're on slideshare.net/Sompre.